So we looked at Article 5, which said that Uganda is a sovereign state, and we discussed what amounts to sovereignty, how Uganda is a sovereign state, and what sovereignty means. But the question is, are there exceptions to when another state or other states can intervene in the internal affairs of another state without undermining the sovereignty of that state? Well, the question is yes, there are those exceptions. Some of those exceptions are humanitarian intervention, the duty that states have to protect, right? So when a country fails to protect its citizens, that is from war crimes, humanitarian crimes, crimes such as genocide, mass killings, another state can come in to do a humanitarian act, humanitarian protection. And usually the UN can consent to that. Usually the UN consents to that. And another exception is self-defense or counterattack. So Article 51 of the UN Charter accepts that. It gives us an exception that in defense, if a country A attacks country B can attack that country without having to undermine, and it will not be taken that it has undermined the sovereignty of that state. So Article 51 of the UN Charter allows for a country to attack another country if it is in self-defense. That is, if country A attacks country B can retaliate in self-defense, and that will not be taken as an undermining of the sovereignty of that state. Another exception to sovereignty, or when another country can come in to interfere in the internal affairs of another state or without having undermined its sovereignty, is when they have authorization from the UN, particularly from the UN Security Council. Another exception is when a state wants to protect its nationals. What do I mean here? If a state's nationals are in a different country and their life is endangered, they are at risk, and if that state does not come in to act, those nationals may most likely be killed, die, or abused. A state is allowed to come in to protect its nationals in a different country. A good example is in 1976, when Israel came in to protect its nationals who were in Uganda. How? A French plane was hijacked by terrorists and it landed on the entire airport. And most of the nationals that were in that plane were Israelis. And Uganda, under the government of Idi Amin, did nothing about it. Therefore, Israel sent its troops or its forces to come in and rescue its nationals on Ugandan soil, which was a successful mission. However, Uganda argued that that was an undermining of its sovereign power because the attack happened on its soil without its consent. However, Israel counter-argued that it did so under the principle of protection of its nationals who were abroad. Therefore, this leaves us with a question of, when is a state not misusing the exceptions that are put in place by international provisions when sovereignty can be overruled? When do states hide behind the curtain of these exceptions to actually undermine the sovereignty of other states, especially weaker states? And also, back to the principle of sovereignty, when do countries, or do actually countries do it? Do countries sometimes hide behind nationalism and sovereignty to avoid responsibility, to avoid accountability when other nations are trying to hold them accountable for the crimes they commit, for war crimes, for undermining democracy, for all those principles that are put in place? At that times when countries hide behind the curtain of nationalism and sovereignty to avoid international accountability? Well, that's a question for us to think about. I'm Justine Safari from Center for Policy Analysis.